we provide such an array of services. We're a dual agency, which is somewhat unique across the state. In the other areas, there's either specific domestic violence shelters, specific sexual assault shelters, and specific homeless shelters. And what's unique about us and what I really like is the fact that we do all of that. And I think, even though I've only been here 8 years, they intersect.
They do.
I mean, you see the intersection of, people who are going through domestic violence or have been sexually assaulted, starting over, they technically are homeless. When I first started this work, my history was the fact that I'd worked with social services in child protective services and going into homes. And, when there's an allegation of abuse on a child, there's usually more abuse, something else in the home going on, and things, eventually follow suit and escalate. So, it finally led me to this, and just in the short 8 years that I've been here, and I don't know what you all have seen, just from the beginning to where we're at now, is the trends change. But then I also feel like what agencies see across the state as far as what is working, it shifts where the funding goes. When I first came on board, it was the homeless program was, they had just started this rapid rehousing, and they were getting away from transitional and permanent supportive, and it was like, okay, rapid rehousing is going to work. And what I see is different forms of housing works for different areas. So I think there's some positive things as far as rapid rehousing for us, but then I think it's not the answer.
Yeah, we need the other programs.
We need the other programs, and I think where we're shifting is to the other programs come the new funding. I feel like we kind of like grit our teeth till the NOFA comes out on what is there going to be more funding, or are we just level funded? And the scary kind of thing is when there's level funding, each year we see such an increase in the people that we're serving. And so when you're level funded, there's not more money, but we're serving more people.
Right. Yep.
So, and I think that's different programs, because, like I said before, when people just do one part of what we're doing, they're receiving just that funding for that program. Whereas where we're doing everything, housing, domestic violence, homeless, sexual assault, those are all different funding sources. And, I think right now, one of the big things this year is, the prevention funding. How do you see that playing out?
And I think that's so important, especially in this area, because this area is so unique. The dynamic is so unique, and we see so many generational cycles. You mentioned social services, and that's where I started my career in CPS at social services. And you see, grandma went through the system, mom went through the system, now daughter's going through the system with her new baby, and it's like, okay, and we see that here with the generational. So I've just found it to be a very important thing to go into these schools as young as we can, because things are starting with these kids younger. It's not teenagers anymore. It's 9, 10, 11-year-olds that are having the same issues and troubles and problems, and we get them early and let them know that they have support, they have resources, they can talk about their problems. There are links. They're not alone. There's so much more mental health that these kids bring up to me when I go to the schools. Depression and anxiety, isolation, just talking more in regard to LGBTQ resources that are available. And that's another thing in this area, that you're in a Bible Belt. So these kids that are experiencing that feel even more so isolated with the other things that they're dealing with. So these programs are super important, and I feel like just the little bit that we've done in the past 3 years and now having it grow, the feedback that we get back from these kids is amazing. It's like, we didn't know we had this resource, and we didn't know that you were out there, and it's so great to know that there's an adult that we can talk to this stuff about. And we've created Instagram pages in regard to the prevention program, to where the kids can come if they had any questions and talk and stuff. So it's very youth oriented. The new program that we are implementing now, the Do You program, I mean, that's so awesome. And it's I could talk all day about that, but it's awesome, and it's going to be very art related to these kids. And it's not just for the schools. I mean, we can offer it to church youth groups. We can offer it to any, like the Boys and Girls Club. I mean, we can go anywhere and do this program that they want us to do it. So it's great, and I'm looking forward to doing more with that. So we can try to grab these kids and make a social change with them.
And I guess my question to you is, okay, so when you're in the schools and you're working with these kids have, someone that they can talk to. Are you working with them on having that conversation with mom and dad?
Oh, definitely.
Okay, because it's just interesting. I was talking to a parent, and their question to me was, well, how do I change them? And I was just like, I just kind of cringed, and then they come back and, well, I still love them. And I'm like, oh, this is, so I feel like, there's got to be a connection that they can talk to mom and dad.
And I've even, when I talk to the students, because, that's my direct contact, but when I talk to them, we talk about having a conversation with family members. It's not always mom and dad. Sometimes it's grandparents. You know that all too well in this area, that grandparents have become mom and dad in a lot of homes. Sometimes it's foster families. Whoever your parent or guardian is usually how I word that. But we talk about that. But I also offer, because with the schools we have to send a letter home that talks about the program. So when I send that letter home, I always say, if you'd like to call me, we could talk, anything that I can help with your child. And I have had parents reach out to me many times saying, what do I do? I'm at a loss. And so, and it's good that they're willing to say, I don't know what to do, help me with my kid. How can I get this conversation going? Because it's hard. Just to help with that. So if we could get more of that conversation going, to where you have a proactive conversation with your child and their caregiver, then it may help diminish some trauma that may happen and lead them down a road that we don't want them going on. So that's a whole other thing. So prevention is more than just what people think of, let's go into the schools and do a program with the kids. It really is. It really does involve their whole family dynamic, because there's so many, and sometimes when I go in, they'll say, can I take a brochure home to my mom? They really need some help. So it's like, because there's abuse in their home, or there's addiction in their home, or they know the financial struggles, and hey, we're getting ready to get kicked out of our home. So, and kids carry these struggles. I know some parents and guardians, they try to hide it from their kids, and so they won't have to. But kids aren't stupid. They know what's going on. So they take our stuff home to their family, where the family may not have otherwise heard about us. So it really is a good program. I'm really excited to get it going, and well, to keep it going further than what we've done. It's awesome. And just our DV, any victim services that we do, it's amazing to be a part of that program. The outreach, most people know we're a shelter. Most people know that that's what we do, right? Mm-hmm. But the outreach services, we will go with you to the hospital, we will go with you to court, we will go with you to the police station, we will go with you to help you, we will offer you support groups, we will offer you one-on-one counseling. We're here for you, and we do, of course, offer you shelter if you need a safe place to go, but we help link to other resources to help these victims of domestic violence and sexual assault realize that they have a strength, they have a place to go, they have a voice, and they can truly overcome whatever trauma and whatever battle that they've had. And I think it's just amazing that we can offer that and be a part of that.
The service area that we have, mm-hmm. It spans 1,200 square miles. I mean,
it's huge.
Crazy.
It's not an easy, for us down here, it's not, 20 miles is an hour.
It could be an hour.
It could be over an hour travel time. And, I mean, haven't you gone to some pretty remote?
We have, where Kurt and I have worked together in Lee County, we have driven to homes that we had to drive through creeks. If it had rained, the home is totally not accessible. So that's been a real wake-up call for me. Having worked in banking, I can apply, my money skills and that, but just getting to reach these people. And some of the homes have just been appalling. And to see those kids living in that, the home is uninhabitable. The parents have no parenting skills. Drugs are involved. And we've had some where the children are actually more of an adult than the parents are. Mm-hmm. They get a little bit of help from the schools, and it's helped them grow. And some of the parents have no education, and so the kids have taken over the household. So it's a very big burden on the children that are living in this poverty, and they don't know from day to day whether they're going to have a home. Mm-hmm. They have no clothing. They have no hygiene items. And, of course, food is a big issue, because when they leave school, they're not guaranteed they'll get anything else to eat until they go back to school the next day.
And I know I've seen just, with staff, the amount of food boxes that we're doing, mm-hmm. and taking hygiene items, just basic things to the homes with them. And the interesting thing is, when most of these people, everyone's like, oh, well, everyone has a cell phone. No. But really they don't. When we get these messages, when someone can go to a library, or they've gone mm-hmm. to town and there's a public computer and they're messaging us, and get an address,
and
that's it, just to drop off food. But yet you have victims of domestic violence reaching out to us mm-hmm. that way, because they can't access.
Transportation is such a big issue, and then, if you don't have money for food, how would you have money for a cell phone? And so we meet them in libraries, we've met them in Wendy's, McDonald's, just wherever we can get to them. If they don't have any income, people in their neighborhood will take them places to meet us, but they charge them outrageous fees.
Yeah.
And so we just go wherever we need to go to get to these people, because people in this area are still blind to the fact of how many people are homeless.
Mm-hmm.
How many people are living in places they shouldn't be. We've had people living in sheds,
Abandoned houses.
Houses with no electricity, no water. They use candles. They've burnt their furniture for heat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I guess as a director, I know funders probably are always like, well, everybody always wants more funding. I'm because of such an increase in all of our services and our need for actually more workers to be able to provide 1,200 square miles and the amount of people that we do have here, but then you're kind of like more employees versus more direct service money.
Right.
It's a catch. It's a catch-22 because you're just,
So then it's
you kind of need both.
Right.
And,
and you go to Lee County one day and you drive around, that could take you all day long.
Yes.
By the time you go to Lee County, go to a couple of different houses and do your work and then come back, that's all day.
And trying to run between Lee County and Scott County, it's a lot of miles. Trying to find a place to meet because some of them really don't want you to come to their house. They're ashamed.
there's that
They
pride.
don't know how to
Right.
get out of the situation, and so they're trapped in that vicious circle. And so I would love to see more outreach programs. And again, it's the funding and the workers.
Yeah, and it's just it's hard, for me again as when you have even with like the DV advocates working with domestic violence, if they're taking a victim to court in one of these areas, you're talking an hour and 15, 20 minutes travel time to court, wait time, and then the travel back, and that takes one person. Just there's they can't. That's the only thing they can do, and it probably takes 6 or 7 hours
Yes.
for the entire day.
Court days are usually like I don't know when I'll be back. Sometimes it's over at 10, sometimes it's over at 2. If there's a trial, then I'm there until an undisclosed time. You just never know, but that's part of it. And just like with the transportation and going to people's houses you were talking about, we have to factor in safety when
Absolutely.
we go to.
And that's when I think like what they see intersects with what is actually happening in that home, and then we come by and we have this conversation about what is actually happening, what has led, and you see, well, they probably need some services. There's abuse, there's emotional abuse, there's the kids are this, that it's not meant for human habitat.
You have to be very, very careful when you walk in. You're trying to help somebody and you're trying to do this work, but you never know what you might be walking into, and you have to be careful. You have to be safe. When we get a specific DV call, we don't drive willy-nilly to that house. We get our police involved and for safety and to make sure that person has all their resources and they're safe when they get out. And
remember when you called about the home you went to and the raccoon? She played with the raccoon that came up. There was they had the toilet was falling in,
And there was that huge hole that was bigger than this, and the little boy was 7, and he was afraid to go to the bathroom at night because he said there were raccoons and possums that would come from the basement up into the bathroom, and he was afraid he'd get bit. So that is probably the worst scenario I've been to. But thank God, we did move them out of that home. But what happened is the landlord filed suit against them for leaving the home. and they ended up with like a $3,500 charge, and the house
back
should
rent.
never have been rented to start with. And so it's very hard when you have to meet with some of these landlords that they feel they're fine with what they're
With
renting
what
these
they're
people.
renting.
Yeah.
And would you put your family in there? You wouldn't.
Okay, no, you wouldn't.
That's
But
shameful.
there's so many people that the only check they're getting is maybe a disability check or an SSI check on the child, that's what they can afford.
Right.
So what they're living in is not habitable, but it's affordable living for
Right.
them.
And you have landlords who don't accept HUD because
It would never meet HUD
It would
requirements.
never meet
requirement.
code. Never. And so to see these people say, well, you know, it's better than where I was if you try to find them a different home, I'm like, but you deserve better. Getting that across to them, you deserve a better home for you, for your children. That's a real struggle.
And people don't see that.
No.
And when you when you look back and you talk to people, do they often disclose any type of abuse or trauma, like maybe as a child or maybe a former relationship, or they were just witness to something? There's some sort of trauma.
A lot of the women that I've met, sexual trauma, and it was from a family member when they were growing up.
So you
And they had nobody to go to.
Mhm.
And so they just dealt with it the best way they can. They've learned to just accept whatever life throws at them and not have that expectation of, I deserve better.
And when you have that mentality and you grow up not realizing that maybe you're in this trauma mind, you don't feel like you deserve more than what you've gotten
Right.
with that house.
And I've
And
had,
it all links together
and
with that
intersects.
trauma.
I even had a mother show up, and I was trying to move her daughter into a better home, and she said, well, it was fine for me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that
They
doesn't
don't
make it
want
right.
Yeah.
And to try to get that across to the daughter, not listen to her mom, is another challenge. You can do better. You deserve better. Let me help you.
I think just the mentality, and it's everywhere, but especially I think in small towns, of not just your pride, but you don't talk about certain things.
Right.
You know, because you don't want to make the name look bad.
Or even, you know, if
or-
you say, you know, do you feel like you need counseling to help you, you know, recover from that? And they're like, I'm not crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's still
Well,
it's
I'm
such
not-
a stigma to
Right.
Admit that something bad happened in my life and I need to deal with it. So many people
Do you
won't
think?
do that.
Do you think some of that, the opioid crisis down here, the drug addiction and stuff, ties into this? Where
I do.
Oh, definitely.
yeah, they've started. That makes it go away.
Yes.
Well, it's self-medicating. I mean,
Yeah.
that's any addiction, alcohol addiction, drug addiction. It's self-medicating from some type of
Trauma.
pain and trauma and incident that you've not dealt with. And that's what a lot of people don't understand when it comes to this drug crisis in this area, is something led them to that point. And if you can get to that root cause and that person actually wants help, well, I don't know how that goes, but and that's another thing, we just need so much more in terms of mental health services and rehab services in our area.
We do.
That we don't have, and that's sad, and that makes it very difficult for healing and moving on for people. But yeah,
Well, I think it leads to, the violence. The sad thing is, probably over the last 3 years, the violence has just escalated.
very much so.
It's not a simple assault. I can honestly say in the last 3 years, we're talking women getting shot, bones broken, beat, and I mean, it's just become so aggressive.
Well, the several cases that I've had of malicious wounding, just somebody with knives and axes and hammers, and it's just it's beyond what people could think. And then I hear, well, they were on drugs or they were drunk, and so it made maybe a violent person even more violent.
Well, and having so many people losing their high-paying jobs here
Yes.
has absolutely added to it, because when you hear women say, well, he didn't beat me before he lost his job, but now he drinks. Just trying to talk to these women, it's just very difficult, because they love this person, they don't know how to leave. It's the father of their children. If he could get a better job, it would end.
Well, there's always so many barriers, and people just don't understand the dynamic of a violent home and a violent situation. And how many times do we always hear, well, why don't they just leave? Why don't they just leave?
It's just not
Why
that
did they
easy.
go back?
And I could give you a 2-day lecture on why they don't, and let me try to, we all could, because there's so many dynamics as to why somebody doesn't just leave. It's harder than that, and there's so many barriers in our area, and that's just another thing that we do what we do to try to take some of those barriers down, to help people as much as we can. That's why we do our victim services, we do our homeless services, we do our support groups. That's why we do these programs in the schools. We have our 24-hour hotline. So people, they have an option and a resource. They have something in this area, and it's just important too. On the other end of services is, I hate to say advertisement, but awareness. Because people can't access something that they don't know is here. So just getting the word out to our communities and to these areas that, I can call that number and get help. I never knew y'all existed. This is great.
But again, that's, if you had someone who could just solely concentrate on that, we're so stretched.
Right.
We're providing direct services. We're trying to keep the place running. We're, because we're doing so much, and I think the needs have grown. We've kind of tried to expand on what we're doing. It's kind of hard to, but I think it's coming. I think we've kind of made a push to what we're about.
Growth is good.
Growth is good.
Well, for me, I feel like, I think about this job 24 hours a day. You wake up and you're thinking about things you could have done, things you saw that, the previous day,
or whose power is going to be turned off.
Yeah.
What do we need to do for that family so that it doesn't get cut off, that doesn't lead to a child being in the home,
right.
And then Child Protective Services coming in, removing the child because there's no power in the home.
Well,
it
doesn't turn off when you leave work.
Yeah.
It doesn't turn off.
It doesn't.
It's there, and that's another thing with victim services too. You will have people message you at any time, and homeless services as well, because you become their they fix this, so now they can fix this. You're their person, and you might get a message at midnight. You might get a message at 5:00 in the morning. You might get a message at 7:30 when you want to just sit and watch Jeopardy. But They need you, you know, and you don't just turn it off and be like, call me at 8:30 and we'll talk then.
It is not a 9 to 5 job.
You don't do that. So that's, you know, when you get into this line of work, it's not just a job. And I think
But I think that says, you know, from my perspective, as a director, it takes dedicated, compassionate people to do this job. And I think it says a lot about you guys as individuals in what you do, that you go up and beyond, whether it's 1 o'clock in the morning or, you know, 5 o'clock in the morning. It doesn't end.
And everybody here, I think, you know, they always, you have the heart, but for me personally, it's a calling. I couldn't imagine doing anything else. I mean, we all know I want to go be a famous singer, but I'm sitting here thinking, even if I were a famous singer, I would want to sing music that would raise awareness. And then if I ever won the lottery, I would open the biggest shelter in Wise County. I mean, you know, you always think if you have all these big dreams, what you would do with it, and it's just,
we need a bigger shelter.
yeah, we need a bigger shelter and more room and
Absolutely.
more way to help people. But it's just, it's who you are, and you just couldn't do anything else, because that's just what you're led to do in this life.